pretty straightforward, relatively easy. Honestly, there were some that were not so much, and we took those out yesterday. So, excuse me. 3S5 statements and conditionals. So we are going to start with defining what a statement is. A statement is any sentence that is true or false, but not both. So, for example, the sum of 6 and 5 is 11. Is that true or false? Can we say that it's true or false? We could say that it's true or false. Which is it? True. A negation is a sentence that has the opposite meaning, so the negation needs to refer back to a statement. So it has the opposite meaning. If it says it is 11, then the negation would say it's not 11, right? If this says it's not 11, then the negation would say it is 11. Does that make sense to everyone? This one, the sum of 6 and 5 is not 11. That is also a true statement. So a statement can't be a question, can't be an exclamation. It's got to be a sentence. So is 7 times 6 equals 42. Is that a statement? It is. It doesn't have words, but we read it in words, right? It is still a statement. So we're going to say yes, 7 times 6 equals 42 is a statement. We could say that it is true or false. That happens to be true. Where did you grow up? That's a question, not a statement, right? The moon is the largest planet. Well, that is a statement. I'm pretty sure it happens to be false, but that is not the criteria, right? Wash your hands before dinner. Is that a statement? No, that's someone telling you to do something, right, like a directive. Now, if they said you should wash your hands before dinner, that would be a statement, right? Cowabunga. That's an exclamation, right? That is not a statement. All right, so a lot of what we're doing today is they're going to give us a statement, and then we're going to have to refer back to that statement and however they ask us to do that. There are several statements in the table below. For each, determine whether it is a negation of this statement. The statement is, it is Tuesday. So, it is not the case that it is Tuesday. That is awkward, but that is a negation. Right? That's basically saying today is not Tuesday. It is not the case that it is Monday. Well, that is a statement, but that is not a negation of this statement. It is Monday. Well, if it's Monday, it can't be Tuesday, right? But it doesn't matter. It's not a negation. It's got to refer back to that same statement. And once again, it is not Wednesday. Not a statement. Or rather a negation. It is a statement. It's not a negation of this particular statement. So far, so good? Okay. So now we're going to talk about some conditional statements. You've probably talked about these before. If-then statements. A compound, so the conditional statements we're going to be referring to are compound statements that have a hypothesis and a conclusion. These are false only when the hypothesis is true and the conclusion is false. So this is an example of a conditional statement. If it rains, the parade will be canceled. Does anybody know what the hypothesis of this statement is? It's actually, it rains, but you're in the right ballpark. Yeah, so we're not going to include the word if. It would be it rains. Now, fortunately for you, you're selecting multiple choice and they don't put if on it when I give it to you. But if you were having to type it in, you would not, or write it on like a pencil paper test, you would not put if in that part. And the conclusion, the parade will be canceled. So, you can write the converse, the inverse, and a contrapositive of conditional statements. So that's what we're going to be talking about now. So if we were to write the converse of a statement, we're just going to be switching the hypothesis and the conclusion. So make sure you underline or circle or highlight switching. And so the example of the converse of the conditional statement at the top is, if the parade is canceled, then it has rained. So you can see here, the parade is canceled and it rains has been swapped, right? So that is the converse of this statement. The inverse is formed by negating the hypothesis and the conclusion. So if it's a negative, we make it a positive. If it's a positive, we would make it a negative. And really the way we do that, for the most part, is we can just put the word not in there if it's a positive, and we can take it out if it's a negative, right? So the inverse of this original conditional statement, the hypothesis stays where it is, the conclusion stays where it is, but we do negate each of those. So if it does not rain, then the parade is not canceled. So this is how we negated this original statement. Now a contrapositive, you switch and negate. So you swap the hypothesis and the conclusion, and you also negate them both. So if the parade is not canceled, then it has not rained. So not only did we swap, so it's basically the converse, but then you put the word not in there, right? So it has rained. Oh, sorry, that's the converse, my bad. Yeah. The parade will be canceled. The parade will not be canceled if it does not rain or has not rained. Okay? Now this is something important that I want you to write down, because I spent your test period yesterday working on your assignment myself yesterday, because, like I said, this is the first time we've taught it. We haven't used any of these questions before. And so I did find that there were 3 questions that were terrible, and Ms. Rayleigh and Mr. Huntley agreed, so we took those out. I also found one type of question that was confusing to me, but this will help you, and this we do need to know how to do this. So we need to know that if they give us a conditional statement, like an if-then, and they ask us for another true statement, if they give us 3 choices, we're going to pick the contrapositive always, because the contrapositive is the only one of these 3 that is always a true statement if the original statement is true. So if they give us 3 choices and ask us for the true statement, well, the contrapositive is going to have to be our choice. So it kind of takes out any guesswork, because I'm going to show you an example here in a minute and let you see what I'm talking about. Okay. I'm looking for one. Okay, here it is. Are y'all caught up with me? Okay, so I'm going to show you the one I'm talking about. So this is a preview of your assignment for today. We're going to do all 3 of these, and I'll tell you which one I'm talking about. But this first one says true statements. If the wall has been painted, then our instructor hates to fly. Now, true statement. The wall has been painted. So which statement must also be true? So if the wall has been painted is a true statement, and this is also a true statement, then it has to be our instructor hates to fly. Does that make sense? These are nonsensical statements. I don't like them for that reason. That's another reason why using that important feature of a contrapositive is, I wanted to make sure we pointed that out. All right. If I like the poem, then Anne prefers black to red. Which statement must also be true? Yeah. So this is the one I'm talking about. We have three statements, and we have to pick a true statement. This is the one where, for me, they all seem like maybe they could be true, right? Especially because it's a nonsensical statement to start with. But we're always going to pick the contrapositive here because we know if they tell us this is a true statement, then the contrapositive is the only one that is always true. The inverse could be true. The converse could be true, but the contrapositive has to be true. So we're going to switch and negate, and then we know we'll have the right answer. So if we switch, then Anne does not prefer black to red. It's going to be our new hypothesis, right? If Anne does not prefer black to red, and then the hypotenuse is if I didn't like the poem. So that is the contrapositive. Does that make sense? Does it make sense that that's the only true one to me? Right. But by definition of this being the contrapositive, we know we're giving a true statement. And the last one, if Maria knows how to dance, then the tires are old. That's a true statement they're telling us. If the tires are old, then my favorite movie is being shown. Which statement must also be true? So this should put you in the mind of the transitive property. Remember we said if this is equal to this, then this has, and this is equal to this, and the first one's got to be equal to the third one, that weird transitive property. That's basically the same thing. If Maria knows how to dance, then the towers are old. If the towers are old, then my favorite movie is being shown. So the only true statement we could say for sure is if Maria knows how to dance, then my favorite movie is being shown. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. So that was the one pretty much to do with this statement. All right. Consider the following statement. I am in geometry class. Check all the statements below that are negations of this statement. Which ones do you think are negations of this statement? The first one? Any others? Only the first one. Only the first one. It's got to be the direct negation of that particular statement. Look at example 10. Consider the following conditional statement. If the sign is on the table, then the store is closed. What is the hypothesis of this statement? Morgan? You with me? What's the hypothesis of this statement? It is. So if then the phrase that comes after the if is the hypothesis. Okay. So now we're going to write a converse, an inverse, and a contrapositive of a conditional statement that they give us, right? So this first part is our hypothesis. The radio station is playing a Rolling Stones song, and the conclusion is the radio station is playing music. So if they ask us for the converse of this statement, we have to know that means to switch those. So we're going to write switch here. and then that's what we're going to do. So if the radio station is playing music, then a radio station is playing a Rolling Stones song. So the converse means to switch. The inverse means to negate. And right now I can't figure out a way to help you remember that. You just have to find your own way to remember which is which. I can't figure out how to do that. But so negate, if it's positive, we want to make it negative. If it's negative, we want to make it positive, right? But the hypothesis and the conclusion stay in the same order. So here, the hypothesis is going to have not in it. If a radio station is not playing a Rolling Stones song, then the radio station is not playing music. So both are negated, the hypothesis and the conclusion. Hi.
Kevin called up, you having trouble with the door?
It doesn't close all the way sometimes, and I know sometimes it's because the air conditioning is blowing, but sometimes it just sticks, and I don't know if they let it go real easily, it doesn't close.
Well, my problem is there's a code. It's not supposed to have more than 5 pounds of pressure for the door to close.
Right.
Or it's supposed to close too quickly and somebody gets hit by the door.
Oh, okay.
So I'm supposedly limited by the adjustment that can be made.
Okay.
And this is actually pretty close.
Okay.
It doesn't slam hard, it makes contact, and then you hear it latch.
Okay. So sometimes it just doesn't close, and that's okay.
Part of the temperature, you have fish oil in here.
Mhm.
If it's cool, it's thicker.
Mhm.
It doesn't operate quite as quickly.
Okay.
If you had an exterior door and the sun shines on it, it would work a whole lot quicker at 3 o'clock in the afternoon than it does at 8 o'clock in the morning because temperatures change.
Okay.
In the interior room, everything's air conditioned. That shouldn't be that big a deal.
All right.
It's pretty close to being correct.
Okay.
You hear it hit and then latch.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
the other thing is it would hit and it would latch and it would be a lot quicker. But that's where you hit and get somebody hit trying to go out the door.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
we can get by. We'll see how it does. I mean, if we have to, we can come back.
Okay.
You know.
Okay.
Right now,
I just know that I'm in trouble and the school's in trouble if that door doesn't close when a kid walks in and out to go to the bathroom or whatever. So I obviously am trying to remember to tell them to push it and pull it, but they don't always do that.
It's no longer state. That's just school board policy now.
All right. Well, that's good to know.
State amended it. They had so much pushback.
Okay.
The exterior doors have to be locked and closed at all times.
Okay.
State doesn't make you do the interior doors, but the school board didn't change their policy.
Okay. Good
Their
to know.
policy still says all doors.
All right. The contrapositive. So that one you switch and negate. All right. And this one is a little bit easier for me to help you remember because it's the longest word, and switch and negate, if you write them both out, it's long, right? Switch is short, negate is short. Switch and negate goes with the longest word, contrapositive. Okay? So we switch. It's going to look a lot like the converse, but then we've got to put the not in there or take the not out if it had it, right? So if the radio station is not playing music, so that's the conclusion that has now become the hypothesis, and we negated it with the word not. Then the radio station is not playing a Rolling Stones song. So the hypothesis, the radio station is playing, did I do that right? So the radio station is not playing music. Then the radio station is not playing a Rolling Stones song. Yes, it went from hypothesis to conclusion to hypothesis. Any questions? Consider the conditional statement. So, what is the contrapositive? The longest word, that's the switch and negate. Switch and negate. Switch and negate, Morgan. You're writing switch and negate. So see if you can write the contrapositive. So the hypothesis and conclusion switch places. And since this one is a positive, then we're going to make everything a negative by using the word not. What did you write, Thomas?
I'm finished yet.
What do you have written so far?
To switch, does that mean in the object 2 meters long has to start center?
I'm asking you, which part did you write down? Nothing?
Nothing.
Okay, so you didn't try it, is my point I'm making here, right, buddy?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Charlie, did you write something down? What'd you write?
Let's see. If an object is not 2 meters long, then it is not 2 meters centimeters.
Exactly right. So I asked you guys to try these things once, for one reason, so it's not quite so boring. For another, then you haven't tried it for the first time when you see it on your homework and you don't know what to do. You understand things a lot better once you try them, even if you get them wrong. So if we give so many of you now are just writing it for the first time because you didn't try when I asked you to try it, right? So keep in mind, it's not just busy work. It is, when we can, it's better to practice this together. That way you've seen it before you get to your assignment. All right, so if we're going to give the converse of this statement, we are going to switch the hypothesis and the conclusion. So let's all try to write the converse of that original statement on our own. Only switch. All right, Thomas, give a try this time. I know you wrote something down this time.
The object is 2 meters long if the object is 200 centimeters long.
So we're going to say if, yes. So close, but you have to use the if and the then parts, right? So if the object is 2 meters long, then the object is 200 centimeters long. Okay? Still got to be an if-then statement. All right, and then the inverse. So we've already done switch and negate and switch. So now what's this one going to be? This one is just negate. Yep. So the order stays, the hypothesis stays where it is, the conclusion stays where it is, but we do negate both of those. So if they're both positive, we make them both a negative. If they're both a negative, we make them positive. So we're trying that one on our own. What'd you write, Xavier? If the object is not 200 centimeters long, then the object is not 2 meters long. That's exactly right. That is the inverse. All right, so far so good? Okay. So this last example seems ridiculously easy. But not all of them on your assignment are that easy because it's going to use the word some and I don't know. Yeah, I promise you it's not as ridiculously easy as you think it is based on this example. Okay? These statements are not going to be the same on all the different little rows of items that you see here. Okay? So you have to make sure you're paying close attention because when I was doing the assignment, like I said, because we've not taught it before, I would miss these sometimes because wasn't paying enough attention to what exactly it said up top. So some pots in the row have a lid. At least one pot in the row has a lid, and none of the pots in the row has a lid. So we are picking the true statements for each row, and they can have more than one. You have to pick all that are true. All right. So some pots have a row in the row have a lid. Is that a true statement? Yes. At least one pot in the row has a lid. Is that a true statement? Yes. None of the pots in the row has a lid. Not a true statement. All right. Once again, they're not always quite this easy. They are still pretty simple, don't get me wrong, but they're not quite as straightforward as this example makes it appear. All right, is some pots in the row have a lid a true statement for the second one? Mm-hmm. At least one pot in the row has a lid? Mm-hmm. None of the pots in the row has a lid. Well, no, that is not a true statement. And then last, some pots is not a true statement. At least one is not a true statement, and it's the none. So I'm just going to caution you once again, make sure you're paying attention to the different statements. They're not all going to be super straightforward given what they have. Pictures. Okay.